Okay, I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Carlos, and you're a new doctor, correct?
Yes.
When 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 did you pass?
I defended last November 2022.
Okay,
And
so
then,
yeah.
right, so I submitted my revisions, and then I finally got to the graduation stage last July 2023.
Okay, so just 3 months, less than 3 months. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're a coral taxonomist, coral biologist mainly, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And at Salle University.
Still inside the university.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
I'm working on my postdoc right now with Dr. Liquanan.
Nice. So, the question I wanted to ask you, because this is a popular topic, and this is something that's, I think, difficult to navigate for the general public. Very often you have these efforts to save the coral reef. And what's your take on that? So to begin with, often you see these artificial reefs where people sink maybe concrete structures, metal structures, and then hope corals grow on that. So what is your take on that?
Okay. I understand why there is an interest to protect reefs. And when we give talks about the status of our reefs, we usually get a lot of what can we do? What can we do? What can we contribute to this declining? What can we contribute to stop the decline of reefs? And that is very valid because that means they're thinking about their impact as well. But just like in artificial reefs, I think people are generally, how to put this? I think people are generally want to do.
Yeah.
It's like when you put effort on something, you think that's going to yield good results.
Yes.
If you put a large amount of effort on something.
Yeah.
So with artificial reefs, I think the traditional materials that they were using in the past, I heard they would put down big metal stuff that came from old appliances. I heard about tires.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of that in Darwin, actually. You should come visit and check it out. Yeah.
Tires. But I also know from previous conversations with other scientists that these things tend to leak out chemicals, and that is not good for the reefs because it's technically garbage. It doesn't belong there. So the chemicals that were used are starting to degrade. I mean, the material is starting to degrade, and they're giving off chemicals that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So essentially, if you do something like this, the choice of material, essentially something that's guaranteed to be non-toxic, is number one, so that you don't actually do damage. Now, the other, sometimes you see these artificial reefs, and they would be in seagrass or in a soft bottom habitat, in sand, and they're not really in a spot where there was a coral reef to begin with. So what's your take on that?
Right, you are right. Yeah, I saw some of those in, I think, some areas in Batangas.
Yeah.
So they would put them in bare sand.
Yeah.
And it doesn't attract much, or I think it doesn't recruit a lot of coral babies.
Yeah.
That's what we call them in layman's. They would attract a lot of larvae because calcification. Well, there are a lot of things why corals would settle on a substrate, and that is one of the areas where the Marine Science Institute is studying heavily.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's just probably intuitive to put if you want to restore a reef, so don't create another coral reef.
Yeah. So,
right?
so maybe we should for the our interested lay audience, we should clarify. So when the corals fertilize their eggs, the larvae drift in the open ocean for on the order of 2 weeks, correct?
Oh, right. Yes. So corals fertilize externally. So
Yeah.
they are broadcast spawners. They
Yeah.
release egg and sperm into the
Yeah.
water column. Yes. I'm not really sure how long they stay on the water column. I mean, this is specific per coral species. So yes, I think around 2 weeks. And then there are cues on the substrate that would, yes, tell them this is where to settle down.
Yeah.
So they also select. It's like when you select real estate, this is where I want to live, right?
Yeah.
So they also want cues. They also have cues that tell them this is where this is safe, or this is where it might be productive for your growth. We don't really know, but they follow certain cues. So if it is if you're putting an artificial reef in an area where there is no proof of, or there is no, not really proof, that there are no structures that there are no calcified structures before, then that area might not be, that should be a clue already that that area might not be suitable
for
for
corals. So
yes,
so
for
now we
growth.
have a second point. We have the material of the artificial reef, and we have the location. Now, another thing which and there's a very interesting white paper which everybody can download from your boss Dr. Al, and I think I always butcher his name, Liukanan, right?
Sorry.
I think I always mispronounce his last name.
Oh, Dr. Liquanan.
Liquanan, yeah.
Yes.
And so he wrote a very interesting white paper about the also coral gardening. So this is a different thing now. So now when people do coral gardening, they actually take a broken off piece of coral and then they put it on a substrate, actively move a coral. Now I think there are two issues here. First of all, there are legal repercussions in the Philippines for this, right? You can't just do that when you feel like it.
Yes, you need a permit to extract corals from a reef, from the Bureau of Fisheries. So that entails a lot of paperwork. You also have to explain your intention to the barangay officials, to the local government units, and then they would have to agree with what you're doing, and then you bring that far. And then you also have to explain to them what is your intention.
To the Bureau of Fisheries is in charge of that. Okay, so I think there's like my null hypothesis is always that everybody acts in good intentions, right? But I think there are probably a lot of local actors, people who want to do something for the environment, who are not aware of this legal requirements, right? And it's important to stick with that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what is your take if you would compare a artificial reef where you just put a structure and wait for the corals to come versus the coral gardening?
I think it's not either or. It's not artificial reef versus coral gardening. I think before we even start pouring resources on making structures, and because that's very costly, right? If it's even cement, if studying the material, that's very costly. And then coral gardening also very costly because the effort of finding fragments of opportunities or corals of opportunities on the reef is also costly. So
a coral of opportunity would be a small piece of coral that's broken off, which you then intend to grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's very costly if we're just talking about expenses. So before we even think about that, what we think, at least in my conversations when we were writing that paper of coral of opportunities, about corals of opportunities, it shouldn't be the first order of business when in saving reefs.
Yeah.
It's not like we're saying it shouldn't totally be the case or
Yeah.
totally against it, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be the first order of business.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah, very interesting point. So what is the first order? It's essentially, I think it's to remove what killed the reef in first place. Wouldn't that be, in most cases, be the most important thing? So if there's runoff,
right?
Yeah.
I think because what are the stressors of reefs, right? So climate change is there,
Yeah.
but it's mostly anthropogenic disturbances.
Yeah.
So that means we have our impact on the reef.
Yeah.
And that's not really the easiest, but
Yeah.
that's the nearest thing that you should think about. I mean, that's the logical first thing that you should think about. Like, if you're thinking about your impact on the reef, what can you do to reduce that impact? And that's not really to spend on these structures to put there. It's not really to spend on searching for corals of opportunities. It's how you stop. Let's say, for example, how do you regulate sewage? How do you reduce garbage? How do you lessen the impact of tourists on these reefs?
Oh, we don't want to get into politics, but let's assume there's a city in the Visayas and there's a plan to have a large reclamation, and that could be, right, hypothetical example, and that reclamation would probably cause sediment on corals for many kilometers. Would you think so?
Right. That's okay. When you say reclamation, you get sand or material from, where did they get it? From mountains?
Probably, or from the seafloor. Yeah.
Yes, and then you put them beside the coast, so you're extending the land area, right? That's reclamation. I would be very, so this is already a bit interdisciplinary. When I was doing my PhD, I took Eastern philosophy, and I learned the Zen way. I learned the Zen way of reacting to things. I think before you even, because again, reclamation is very costly as well. But don't you think it's ironic that we're destroying mountains so we could extend
the ocean
right?
to destroy the reef? Exactly. Right? Yeah. So then you could say the first order would be, don't destroy the reef in first place.
Right. Protect.
Yeah. Protect.
Reduce human impacts.
Yeah.
Interactions with the reef.
Yeah.
That would be the first.
Let me ask your last question. What I see often in Darwin is that these artificial reefs, they might not have a lot of corals, particularly hard corals, but they're very successful as recruiting fish. So the fish fauna at these reefs, large groupers, large fish, which otherwise would be rare in the Philippines because they're excellent food fish, would thrive there. So would you, is this also your estimate that these artificial reefs probably do more good for the fish than for the corals?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, that a lot of these artificial reefs have more benefits for the fishes compared to the corals. Would you agree with this assessment?
I don't have enough data
Mm-hmm.
to show that artificial reefs recruit more fish. We don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
There are some observations, but I haven't read much in the literature if they are really indeed, for sure, recruiting more fish. But in relation to Darwin, the patch of coral community in that area, I think, and Dr. Likwanan also gave a talk regarding this,
Mhm.
I think the best thing is to just leave it alone,
Mhm, mhm.
right? Don't, it's their habitat. If they're providing habitat for the fishes there,
Yeah,
that's good. And
yeah,
we shouldn't be reduce. Our role is not to reduce the habitat
yeah,
of these fishes. So they
yeah,
just leave it. I think leave it be. That's the best thing.
yeah, yeah. Leave the structures which already exist. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
they're already
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And they protect the fish fauna. Okay, so basically very interesting. So I think would you conclude that yes, all of these methods have their place, but there needs to be very good thinking before you do anything.
Right. We should be
Yeah.
systematic. I think we should
Mm-hmm.
be systematic so it doesn't cost us more. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't cost the environment more.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we could do things with less effort, if we because the of course the goal is to increase the coral cover because the corals serve as habitat. So if that's the goal, we should be more systematic with our actions, and
Mm-hmm.
the activities that we plan out should be more thought of, right?
Okay, that's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
I hope there's somebody somewhere in the Philippines, the Caribbean, Indonesia, who plans an artificial reef for coral gardening and listens to what you had to say. Thank you very much again, and best regards to Manila.
Oh, where are you now?
In Dumaguete. In Dumaguete.
Okay.
Yeah.